Hey, hey, friends and family, how are you out there? Hopefully, all of y'all can hear us. Please give us a note, drop a comment if you can hear us.
She said it's not.
Let us know. Oh, you can hear us. We got it here in the studio too. Yes! Awesome sauce. Okay, well, welcome back to another exciting session of On the Narrative Africa. Actually, it is our first for 2022, so I'm excited. As you know, if you haven't caught up on all the promos, I am here with my esteemed guest. Okay, Doc. Okay, Dr. Dale. How do you say your last name? Because we just got him a new nickname out here in house, but that's a whole other story. But welcome so much. Welcome to African Engineering News on the Narrative Africa, which is a live stream that we feature all things Africa engineering, innovation, tech, STEM, and arts. Okay, all things Africa Rising movement. And so at the end of the day, I just want to make sure folks out there know, let a friend know, because these are always very educational moments. Come pull up your stools, pretend your stools, y'all know my phrase, tell your stool, learn something in the process, and share with the next person. So again, do connect with us on the website, www.africaengineeringnews.com, or across these social media streets at Africa Engineering News, one word. Dr. Dale, welcome to Africa Engineering News. Introduce yourself to the people.
Thank you. No, thank you. We've been trying to have this for a while. I'm Dr. Dale Dangleben. I'm a trauma surgeon by training, actually trauma medical director for about 7 years out here in Pennsylvania, but originally from the Caribbean, island of Dominica. I'm very proud of that. Went to New York for my undergrad degree in chemistry and in medical school here at Penn State. But that's just one part of what I do. I'm a self-taught historian. I'm a Gambian and a Pan-Africanist for the last 6 to 7 years. And that's what this is about. It's about the upliftment, of our people. I always say being pro-Black does not mean anti-everything, but I want to speak of what I've learned so that we can get out of the darkness.
Amen to that. Listen, I love every time I meet with you because I too learn something in the process, right? And it really is that iron sharpens iron, obviously, Some people have a lot more, knowledge, which is part of me. I really enjoy our interactions. I always pick up something. It's always, oh my God, I didn't know that. Let me go back and do my homework on that. And so, as we get into today's topic of Africa, the country, the continent, and the possibility. All right, so that's number one. I included the country up there because for some reason, people are still out here Googling, is Africa a country? The answer is no, okay? Hopefully, if you're watching this, you get this from a friend or tab, there is now 55 member states on the African continent. All right, Africa is a continent. I know, I think sometimes we joke, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to Africa as a country. No, okay? It's a continent, and we want to acknowledge that because I believe the most recent member state that was added to the African Union was in 2011, I believe. What was it? So, was it South Sudan?
South Sudan, yes.
Yes.
South Sudan.
So, yeah, we're not good with you 55, because for the longest time, I said, oh, 54, I was like, no. South Sudan has entered the chat room, so welcome. So, as we unpack that, and also, keeping in mind with why I even do this African Engineering News platform, is it really centers around the importance of owning our narrative as Africans at home and throughout the diaspora. Because I feel like that is a whole unpacking in and of itself, right? The importance of Africans at home throughout the diaspora, folks of melanated skin, whether you call yourself an African, you call yourself Black, or you call yourself indigenous to whatever lens you call home. It is important that we own our own narratives, because for the longest time, the story has been told about us, but from other people's lenses. So and you know, and now even as we have seen with the latest conflict in Europe, which we'll get into that really quickly. Why is it important to do that?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think the most important thing is education. I think there has been a walk away from education, and even the little education that we had, the narrative was driven by the colonizers and the oppressors.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we need to start. So when I say that I found myself 6-7 years ago, I had to go off the path to find that education.
Yes.
And I think a lot of what has happened to Africa is because of the lack of education and the misconception. And even we started believing the things that were told, and even the things that are being portrayed in the media about Africa. Right? If you keep telling the people that they're poor and they're poor and they're poor, they're gonna start believing that, right? Whereas in that same breath, you're taking all the riches out of the country, and the people continue to think that they're poor. So I think there is an awakening. You know, there's an awakening in Africa. We see a movement of a younger generation that understands. I always talk about, you know, the likes of Julius Malema. You know, I listen to Pierre Lumumba, and we have to get that narrative straight. These guys are straight shooters. They tell you the true history and not the history of the colonizers and the oppressors. So Africa must declare itself for Africa and not from the voice of the colonizers. So I think it's important that we start awakening. I always say, Africa, the phoenix is arising out of the ashes finally. And we might not see it in the next 10, 15 years, but Africa will become that predominant force because Africa is the first of all, the cradle of civilization, right? I cannot even have a conversation with people about mitochondrial Eve and how deep it is, and we talk about the Lucy, 3.1 million year old humanoid that was found. It was actually Australopithecus afarensis, you know, found in the Afar Valley in Ethiopia. There's just so much that we don't know, but that was done deliberately. So, full circle with your question, I think it's now the time for us to educate each other. Nobody else is going to do it for us but us. And the key is when you speak of your heritage and you speak of your culture, even if there might be a little bit of something of Europe that came because of slavery, you are African and you must embrace it. And that's the only way we're going to come out of this is by the proper education of understanding your history. Absolutely. I want to say one more thing before I close this segment. You know, George Reisner was supposed to be the father of American Egyptology. He was a professor from Harvard, and he misconstrued everything about Africa that he found. And he said that Black people could not have done what the Kushites did in Sudan, right? And discredited the culture. And these were written in books that Black people could not do these things, right? And I read a poem. How do you describe young Black people about their greatness, about the skyscrapers before skyscrapers existed long ago in Africa, where Black people were and settled and did all these things? So it's about understanding your history and not embracing this full culture. People are telling you that's yours and poisoning you and killing you.
You really like went in on that, which is actually one of the reasons why I love, you know, having these conversations. Because you really touched on a very crucial point, especially in this day and age where we do have access to information literally at our fingertips. So at this point, there is no excuse as to why folks may not be as informed about the PLO movements, about you're right about the Marcus Garvey's, the Toussaint Louverture, about one of my favorites, Tom Mboya. Yo, my Kenyan people, please do your history, learn your history, right? Because even when we look at not just African history, because for me, actually, I got interested in African history when I was looking into Black, like real Black history, not just, like slavery. I was like, no. We will not start people's story from human trafficking and enslavement.
Right, just before that.
No. Okay, tell the full story, right? For me, that's the thing. And so when it comes to, you're right, the importance of education and real education, not the the revisionist history of the colonizer's perspective. Because even myself, even growing up in Kenya, East Africa, I realized we were not taught with the real tenacity that this work requires. You know, because mind you, like that was what in the 90s, and by 1990, let's say, Kenya was only freed since the mid 60s.
Right.
And yet, how the story was told was like, oh, so long ago. It was like forever. Look at these black and white pictures. I was like, oh, it's, we can just move on. Like, it's this thing that happened. And I was like, no, like, my grandparents are, it was them. Like, they were the ones, my grandparents' generation. Like, we have folks alive today who still remember having to go pay their taxes to the queen, who is alive today. Like, like for me, it was into adulthood that it clicked for me. I was like, oh my word, hold up, the colonizer is still alive today.
Oh, very, very, very much so.
The same colonizer queen who was, I'm using it very literally, the same queen who was the lead colonizer, at least in the country, when my parents were born. You're telling me that person has been alive this my whole life, and still is, as far as we know. Rumors and all, so.
We can't let people no longer can they dismiss the narrative, right? I always want to tell the story of the Belgian devil in the Congo. I did not notice until I was an adult, right? I knew everything about Mussolini and Adolf Hitler, and I never knew about King Leopold and what he did in the Congo, right? We got to teach these things. That this was one of the most, dangerous human beings ever, King Leopold II of Belgium. He killed 10 to 20 million people in the Congo. He chopped off the hands of women and children when the men could not meet the quota for elephant tusks and a robber plan. But we don't learn that. We did not hear about what Mussolini tried to do in Ethiopia, right? And Haile Selassie had to be in exile, and the European Union stood around in the 1930s and did not support Africa.
Okay.
Right? These are the things that we don't teach, right? We listen to the song from Bob Marley called War, and we say it's a song, or we listen to him talk about none but ourselves can free our mind. We don't realize these are the words of Marcus Garvey, and one of them is a speech that Haile Selassie gave to the United Nations, and how the same, and I'm going there because that reflects on what is happening right now between Russia and Ukraine, and how black people are being treated. Because if you follow Haile Selassie, when he was pushed into exile by the Italians, how he was treated by the white world, and that's true. That's the truth. Because Mussolini had a plan to destroy Ethiopia, destroy Eritrea, kill all the males above 18. These are facts. We never get taught these things, and black people have been marginalized, right? So I say this: through the history, we have been plagiarized. What? Right? Cultural misappropriation took it all from us and then said you're nothing. But everything, the beginning, the epitome of all culture comes from black culture, and that's the fact. But if you look at Russia and Ukraine, which we're going to transition into, you see what was happening to the Africans and Caribbean students and Indian students.
Oh, that part,
waiting to try to get on that train to get out of war-torn Ukraine. What Russia is doing, we don't condone it, right? But as a Pan-Africanist and a Gambian, you got to speak. You have to speak proudly and firmly on what you believe. Because again, you talk about your silence means that you I forgot the exact saying, but if you're silent on the issue, you're complicit and you're part of the problem and not the solution. So it happened in 1930s. with Mussolini, right? You saw it in Africa repeatedly. We don't talk about this. When Boko Haram went into Nigeria and kidnapped 500 children, where was the outcry from the West? Where was the outcry? Did they go and rescue these kids? No, there's a lot of discrepancy when it comes to Black lives. We cannot just say, well, that's what it is. It's in Africa. It's them. They're doing what they want. And then we treat other people in Europe, differently. So that's my take on that.
And I love the fact that, again, we're not just talking about what's happening right now, because as we know, these life experiences, they actually seem to be quite cyclical. It's like history keeps repeating itself time and time again. Because I had shared this clip that had several folks who were actually speaking in the 60s about, they were just tired of the all talk, no action. Folks are really fed up. And one of my favorite quotes, and I will tag it in this, one of my favorite quotes from one of the gentlemen who was speaking in it was about how he stated, sometimes the cost of freedom is the very thing that costs you that very freedom you thought you bought. And what he was talking about was the Russian War of 1917.
Yeah.
And I was like, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. But we don't. You see, the problem is we don't read and we don't know history, right? I think Thomas Sankara was assassinated in 1987, if I'm not mistaken.
So
right?
In there.
Many people don't know about Patrice Lumumba, right? But the thing about it is this. I read a quote somewhere that the most dangerous thing to any movement and freedom is a happy slave. Because we cannot just point fingers everywhere and not point fingers at what I call house Negroes that repeatedly derail actions. Right? Because if you read up on what happened to Patrice Lumumba, you will see where I'm going with that. But more so, Marcus Garvey and what happened to him. He spent 2.5 years in a jail in Atlanta. Right? He was derailed. But who did they use? We know we have to stop letting folks use us against each other, and that is what has us the way we are currently, right? So they've murdered a lot of our heroes, right? Yeah. I don't want to get into conspiracy theory. We know Medgar Evers was shot. We know Martin Luther King was shot, right? But people said to me, well, why can't you be?
Tomboya.
Yep.
And it was all around the same time, and like within months of each other. And I was like, this is not.
Yep. Malonga, Steve Biko, they were all brutally murdered, right? So what do you do when, Medgar Evers was a military, he served in the American military. He was the secretary of the NAACP, and he was gunned down on his driveway, while his wife and 3 daughters were inside. And they knew American system knew that Beckwith did. They tried him twice and he went free. But it was not until 1994 when they got justice. He was 90 years old when he died. But these are the kind of conversations that people want to sweep under the rug. And when you say to people, well, why can't you be like Martin? You killed him.
Thank you.
You murdered him in Memphis. So you killed the people who stood up for the justice of Black people. And that's why we cannot be silent. And too many of us now have been bought. And that's the problem. Right? And look at what it has gotten us. Look at what it has gotten us. We don't know who we are. Many of us don't know who we are.
Yes.
We don't understand culture. We think what was given to us is what's given, what we have. We're dying young. We're killing each other. And we need to focus on what it is. And I say there's an awakening in Africa, Ghana, Kenya, Botswana, what they're doing. Come on home. Let's build this together. Right? Come on home. Let's build this together. Let's stop importing all our raw materials for pennies while it goes to Europe and America and you're making billions of dollars profit. And then we have missions to Africa and we don't build sustainability. And then they say, well, Black folks are each other's throat over there. That is the misconception that has happened in all of this.
You just dropped major gems in that, right? I was like, where did we start? This whole idea of what the West does to Africa's natural resources, right? And because I've heard it so often with like, oh, Africa, the whole misperception, but Africa is poor. Africa only has raw materials. But I'm like, without the raw materials, how will you do the things that you need to do? How will you have your smartphones and your diamonds and your luxury lifestyle without the raw materials? Right. How do you get all that? And if anything, a lot of our nations have been saying, stop giving us assistance and build infrastructure, right. build mechanisms to actually then internally within the continent do that added value. Because I've actually heard it at international conferences, like, oh, it's because the West adds that added value to it. Right. That's what we specialize in. And I'm like, what makes you think you cannot do that within the continent? You have no problem sending rice. You have no problem sending rice. But I'm like, Africa is like the most fertile. Africa, the continent, is the most fertile place. Like organic fruit, just like rolling down the street. You know.
But what has happened is though, it was set up that way, right?
It is a setup.
So it has to be set up that way because if, for example, Ghana's president said, you know what, we want to build our own chocolate refinery. We're not going to send you the cocoa pods for cheap, right? So once you awaken to that point and realize, you know what, I'm going to do the refinery here, and then I'm going to sell you the refined product at a higher price. I'm going to make a bigger profit. And that is why many countries were afraid of, and that's why the awakening is taking place. Absolutely. Could you imagine this guy sat down, France, Belgium, England, and just decided to dissect Africa? Okay, North Africa is going to be for the Italians, right? This one is French, all of the code, right? And that is what has happened. That's what happened in Africa. And then what you divide the lines, right? They pitted people. So a lot of the things that happened even 20, 30 years after that, amongst the people, was prescribed and transcribed by that division.
Thank you.
And that's what people don't understand, because people don't understand that type of history, right? How the region was stabilized by these colonizers.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Quick reference here, right? So that we're referencing, right, the Berlin Conference of 1864, right? Which is where the big bad colonizer group, inclusive of the Americans, quote unquote dark continent. Right?
That's what they did.
It literally the premise was, so we do not fight each other, we will go fight these people and we will colonize them. And what was it called? It was we are bringing civilization. We're making it more civilized, right? And if anything, you see that one of the things the colonizers to tell us how cultured they are. That people without a technical culture would like to brag about being cultured, where people actually have culture, have been like, we're just doing the thing that we do.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because
it's a thing to just collect.
We don't even go back to Mansa Musa. Right? So you talk about culture. Yeah. When Mansa Musa left Mali and Mecca, and with his caravan rolling, right, it destabilized the trail that he walked through. And you want to say that's not culture? In the libraries of Timbuktu, right, which was a center of knowledge. Yeah, right? Exactly. And people don't know about the Timbuktu scripts. Yeah. How can you say that this was not a culture, people? And who were the Moors of Sicily, and who were the Moors of Spain?
Thank you.
Right? That has been whitewashed. It's black people. And that's fact.
Absolutely. And even when we talk about African history is more of an oral, not a written. I was like, no, if we are the ones who we created language, we created a written language. So how are you going to tell people who created and innovated script that we are not a script keeping, like historical, archiving group of people? It is because, at least for that, I would postulate that because of the intentional damaging to those physical scripts, that we're like, hold up, somebody has to be this chief storyteller to continue. Like, we're innovative. We're like, somebody, we're gonna have to raise somebody to be the backup library, right? Hence the proverb, like anytime an elder passes on a library, a full library is burned down. Which is why I would also like to encourage our young people out there, please talk to your elders, talk to the elders, find out, tell their stories. This is what I'm so passionate about. How do we document? How do we really build the archive of who we are as a people, as communities, as tribes, as wherever you find yourself on this globe, right? Please, it's important for us to tell our story from our own vantage point. Honestly, ask your elders who were like during colonization. If you're African, and because again, referencing a lot of our nations were free again around the same time that the civil rights were happening. Interesting, huh? Ask your elders really like their stories and record it and tell them, share them unapologetically. That is important. So yes, I'm glad you referenced the Berlin Conference, right, of 1865, which again for me I'm a very like big picture thinker. Because when I went back and I was checking the dates, I was like, hold up. That was 1864 was the Berlin Conference. And mind you, only a year later, you have Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Right? June 19, 1865 is when the last of the enslaved people, right? Yeah, discovered that they're free. And I'm sitting there like, folks thinking, like, oh my God, like, America was so kind.
Right.
Are you though?
It's interesting, and you're right. Gotta put things into perspective.
Yeah.
The Monroe Doctrine that a lot of people don't even know about, President Monrovia, in Liberia. The Monroe Doctrine pretty much America put its foot down and said, European colony, you can no longer come here and claim lands like the Spanish and Portuguese did in the West, right, in the Caribbean and in South America, etc. But at the same time, 20, 30 years later, in 1865, they're in Africa, they're splitting it up like it's a pie, it's a pizza pie. But talking about history, what they've tried to do is, even the portrayal of Egypt, right? They make you feel like certain parts of Africa is not in Africa, right? Certain parts of Tanzania, it's not in Africa.
All of it is on the place.
Exactly, certain parts of Kenya. But and that's why they can tell people that Africans did not build the pyramids and this and that and that, and people don't even realize that the empire of Mali and Kush was some of the greatest empires ever built, and they don't even realize that the Nubians in the empire of Kush, that's in Sudan, right? And when you talk about pyramids, people think of Egypt, but the most pyramids are actually in Sudan, right? So these were black people in Africa doing these things. But white Europeans, and this is a fact, I'm not going to stutter on this issue, that George Rice, the likes of George Rice, would tell you, well, they could not have done that. And then even some lighter skinned folks will say, well, they did not do it. It's another influence. It come from Asia Minor. It's aliens and all these things. But if you want to read a good book, you read Black Athena by Martin Bernal. And Martin Bernal is a white man. All right, so the Afro-Asiatic roots. These are great books to read. Find yourself in hidden books. Books that you never saw in school. The same thing that happened in Africa to you in Kenya is the same thing that happened in the Caribbean. I knew about Francis Drake and John Hawkins, but the sad fact is they never taught me this in the Caribbean. Because I wanted to be a pirate on the wild seas. Like Drake was 16, and he was the cousin of John Hawkins. The ship that John Hawkins was the captain of, I want to think it was called Jesus. And it was bought and owned by the Queen of England. And that was one of the first slave ships to enter into Africa to steal Africans, right? But in the Caribbean, they made me feel like Hawkins and Drake were heroes. No, they were plumbers. They were thieves. They stole people from Africa for the crown colony of England. So when we talk about the oppression of Africa and the stealing of slaves, we got to talk about the financial and the empires that were built on these things, right? The Bank of England was built on slavery. Many institutions in the United States were built on the backs of Africans stolen from Africa.
Thank you.
So we cannot sit there and say, well, that's in the past. And too many of us black folks are still saying that. I mean, we can go on and on and on and talk about these things, but I'll stop there.
No, listen, I am loving this. Absolutely, right? Because that's the thing. Because even now, when we talk about how whenever there's conflict between two people, also how Africa, the continent, okay, I want to be very clear, Africa, the continent, even though, right, it gets brought in, but they might use a puppet nation, let's call it what it is, to do the bidding of one of the puppeteers, right? And I mean, and we saw that. We then also tagged. I saw a TikTok the other day, and one of the reference because so this is a quick sidebar. One of the things that I really enjoy about how folks are learning nowadays is through these quick mediums, right? We have literally decolonized Black Twitter, Black social media, Black TikTok has. I am loving what folks are doing. I'm loving the work folks are doing out here because we are normalizing the conversation. We are normalizing and updating the discussions around these topics. We're making them very relevant to the things that are happening today, right? Even the way like some folks have really broken down the Ukraine and Russia conflict, the Philistine and the Israeli conflict as well as a lot of the conflicts that are happening on the mainland, on the continent, right? Because I found it odd, or rather interesting, how at the same time when the U.S. was hesitant to speak out against the Russia-Ukraine conflict, I was like, oh, it makes sense. You literally just bombed, what was it, Somalia, a couple of days prior. But that didn't really make the headline.
But the issue of that, if you remember South Africa and the apartheid system and where America stands in those, in that. As a matter of fact, people tend to forget that Nelson Mandela was on the world's most wanted list while he was in prison for 27 years on the America and English until 2008.
Yes.
His name was removed from that list. And these are facts, guys.
Facts.
Right? So when the rest of the world was saying, free Nelson Mandela, that was the chant, right?
Yeah.
And then, you could say, well, he became president, everything is okay, but no. You got to listen, say what you want about Julius Malema.
Thank you.
He is looking at it from indigenous person of South African land and how he sees it and he speaks for his people.
Absolutely.
P.L. Lumumba is one of the most brilliant orators of our time. You put him in the likes of Frantz Fanon and those people, but we have to listen.
And they've been saying the same thing. This is one thing I will say. These folks have literally been consistent about the messaging. You literally, you take one person's school of thought, and they're literally, it's consistently the same messaging. And actually all the way to MLK. A lot of people like to highlight more of his earlier works and like, oh, this is kumbaya and da-da-da. But once you begin to take into consideration when MLK, yes, people's favorite, when he says, I fear that I might have integrated us into a burning building.
Yeah.
And then when you watch him, I believe it was his last long interview, he goes in, and I was like, okay, MLK.
And that's where it was getting to the point that, oh my God, this is right. So
you're becoming right.
So when we got right now, when we teach that history, we got to teach it all the way.
Tell me the full truth.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Even if it hurts your feelings, but that's what happened. It's the truth. And that's what we need to tell. So, this critical race theory, I'm sorry, but you know what? It's what happened.
And for me,
it's what happened.
And that's the thing for me, like, it's simply history.
Right.
It is simply history, unfiltered, un, you know, you know.
Yeah. Why can't we talk?
Yes.
Why can't we talk?
And ask yourself.
Yeah.
Why have you been so okay being miseducated for so long? Because for me, like when I began to do my research, because again, these are not things that I was taught in the classroom. These are things I had to seek out myself, right? A whole engineering degree from a really amazing school. Shout out to myself. From a really amazing institution. Yet you never touch on the impact of civil rights within my discipline. Because for Black History Month, when I did my full February highlight and like elevating Black significance across various areas of my life, I was like, hold up, just in transportation alone.
Right.
You know, when you look at the civil rights, when you look, you can't have, you know, global human trafficking and enslavement without transportation. Okay, right? But also keeping in mind it was the Africans who were master navigators across these waters, right? When our Pacific Islanders, you know, brethren, you know, were fighting who? The Spaniards? Yeah. And they called for assistance from their African brethren.
It's history that we're not being taught. You know, there's a lot of things that I have discovered on my own. Like, wow, it took me 40 years, you know, to learn these things. But now it's up to you and me and folks like us to pass on that knowledge, you know, in such medium. And writing books and things like that, you know, because I can tell you, we've gone so far away from this idea of what, you know, an African identity and the spirituality that comes with it. We've lost that many of us try not to even want to identify. We don't want to identify with it, and it breaks my heart. You know, I'm going to go in there because, you know, we have to be able to point fingers at each other and say, hey, you know, you see the bleaching and you see all these other things that's happening to us. And it shows you the extent of the damage that has been done in terms of mental slavery. But again, I will, with that said, I will say what I said at the beginning. And it takes each and every one of us, you know, not to dislike the other person, but to promote, right? Because what we're doing here is something of positivity.
Absolutely.
And stop the infighting amongst each other, right? Not Marcus Garvey did not just talk about going back to Africa.
Yes.
But I always thought he had the best of promise for us in terms of, you know, Black Moses, that's what he was. But what he talked about was economic empowerment, you know, and he led by example. He started the printing press, he bought the boat, right? But he was derailed. You know, the concept here is, you know, when it's from Africa and from the Caribbean, you know, but we have to identify with that deep-rooted spirituality of our Blackness. And I think that's important. You know, we're here in my gallery, you know, where you have African art behind us. But if you look at African art, and you look at Haitian art, and you look at some of the Caribbean art, you see the connection. So African American, you see it. It's written. It's in our DNA. It's in our code, and that's who we are. And you cannot run away from it. We can't run away from it. And don't let other people try to take it away from you, and you feel less because they've made us feel so much less that it's so difficult to come back up that ladder to see where you were and how great you are.
Yeah. Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah.
Right? Because there is something to knowing who you are as a people, not just individually, right? And at least for me, that's one of the things that have really been ringing true for me. Even when I look back in undergrad, when I was just trying to, you know, get my feet about me in engineering. I will forever say being Black in STEM, especially at PWI, is a very interesting experience. And when I was like in my deepest struggle, it was actually the thing that my mentors used to remind me and kind of was the it was not, oh, you're just smart. It was always, don't you know where you're from?
Right.
Don't you know your lineage? Because it would actually, oh, where are you from? Like, because I just carry that. I carry that. So, you know, and the people who don't know me, like the moment they met me, they're like, what up, where you from? And I tell them, and they're like, Sid, don't you know where you're from? Don't you know who you are? Don't you know what's in your DNA? They'll always tell back to that.
Yeah.
Right?
Important.
And they would always remind me of that. And I was like, what do they know that I don't know?
Right.
And that's what the kind of piqued my interest in. Okay.
Right.
Clearly I'm missing something. Clearly I have been misinformed about something. I need to find out. And as I began my journey in true African history, it made sense to me finding why, I'm gonna be honest, why white people are really, I was like, it hit me, it was like, no wonder. Because the male was like that.
Right. And that was the history that was taught to us.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I got a great science background in the Caribbean, chemistry, math, but when it came to history, I mean, let's be realistic. The books were written in England, you know, and it was, and everything was set up that way, and that's what it is. So much was hidden, still hidden, and I think it's, you know, like I said before, you know, once you find it, you cannot not impart it onto somebody else and teach it. You know, it doesn't have to be this lecture every time. It could be in the arts, right? It could be just in a little, you know, in poetry, whatever way you can. But the point is to not be driven to
yes,
because that's what part of the agenda is, to be driven to anger. So then you're labeled as such, and then what happens? You end up, you know, back in slavery in the prison system, right? You have to center yourself, understand it, and one of the things I always say, it's not fair. Life will never be fair. Don't go into this negativity and say, oh, I'm owed this, I'm angry, and lose yourself. Do what we did. She's an engineer. I'm a doctor, right? The brain is the most powerful thing that we can use to overcome our struggles. Turning a gun on each other and fighting and stabbing each other is not a solution. It's part of the bigger agenda, right? So this appeal has to be universal. So no matter, you know, Peter Tosh said, you know, as long as you're Black and African, that's a fact. That's a song from the late 70s, early 80s. It's a fact. You got to love yourself. Remember when we used to say Black is beautiful and the Afro and the Afro pick, and right? The Rastafarians, the Black Power movement, but all of these groups were vilified.
Yes.
All of these groups were vilified. And I always say, I grew up in the Caribbean, and I can relate with the Rastafarians, and I guess what I say, the Rastas were always right. They were right in terms of the diet, right? The salt no sugar, right? And they were also right about many social and political things.
Absolutely.
And what happened? They were chased to the hills, they dreadful chopped off. So much was done. Now people use these things as if it's a style. When I talk about the misappropriation of our culture and the plagiarization of our culture, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Look at what is the in thing now in Hollywood, right? The black features, the beautiful lips, right? That they used to, you know, make fun of, right? It's now taken. People are now going down to certain clinics and having enhancement done, right? The music, right? You talk about, you know, Elvis and rock and roll, and you talk about R&B, and you talk
country.
Let's be honest about it. In order for us to live together and be promoted together, we have to accept this fact that these atrocities existed, this bias and racism continue to exist, right?
Absolutely.
She's an engineer, I'm a physician. We still walk in that space where people look down on us. But guess what? It makes me strong to be better and not worry about that.
Listen, you said it. You said it. You said what needed to be said. Point blank period, right?
Yeah, we don't have to. As long as you're speaking the truth and it's positive, you don't have to worry about what people think about you.
And correction, it does not even have to be quote unquote positive. Like as long as it is true. Truth, like love, is self-evident.
Yeah.
Truth is self-evident. You cannot wash it with anything else, right? And even when we hear about these revisionist history, time comes back and vindicates truth.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Time will always come back.
That's what we see now. We're living through that.
Right? I was like, and that's for me, this Africa Rising movement that has been happening for over a decade now, right? Where at the end of the day, I'm saying this, my African people, we don't simply want to be handed off from one colonizer to another.
Right.
And I really want us to be very cognizant of that.
You gotta talk about
we do not need to be handed off from one colonizer. You get quote unquote emancipated, right? And then and it's all just paperwork, and you get a new master. That's not what we want. We really want to get back to a place where we get to own our narrative, own our story, own our culture. Because there's value in our culture. There's so much value.
The greatest value.
You know, I was like, the colonizers would not have deceived our ancestors and stolen all of our cultural artifacts if they were worthless.
Right.
Keep that in mind.
Right. And all these things were taken out.
Literally. And
scattered around the globe. Some of it is here in the United States.
Yes.
And the Black Panther, the Wakanda story. There's a really great story there when he goes into the museum in Europe, right? I mean, I just thought that was so well written in there. But that's fact, right? That is fact. I mean, I don't want to go into the controversy of this, but all this gold and artifacts came from South America, Central America, and Africa, right? And certain parts of Asia. That's the fact. So how can you now look at Africa and say, well, it's a poor country? But now, I know time is going by here, but it's up to Africa and Africans.
Thank you. At home and throughout the diaspora.
The diaspora to really make that change and stop seeing yourself as an oppressed people and start seeing yourself as kings and queens. Because again, this would just be a circle. This awakening is good. I said Africa is awakening, but you talked about I call it neocolonialism.
Thank you.
We see it in the Caribbean, and we see what Russia and China is doing across Africa and the Caribbean, and we've eaten it up. But these loans that we're taking from these countries, guess what? They come in and they're taking
selling your ports.
They're taking the ports. They're taking your raw material.
Thank you. And bringing their own labor too.
Bringing your own labor. It's time for the African continent to wake up and say, you know what? Yes, they divided us, based on this and that. But at the end of the day, you're the richest country when it comes to the God-given minerals and materials that lies in Africa. Our cell phones would not exist without Africa.
It would not.
All this diamond and gold would not exist.
It would not. Absolutely. No, and thank you for bringing us full circle in context of, well, how do we, as African people, as African nations, really come together so that we can negotiate with these external superpowers, right, on an equal footing? Because I want to be very direct. The negotiations have been very unfair. You cannot come as an Australia, as a UK, or after Brexit, but you can't, or America. You cannot come as a Western superpower to negotiate with a single nation, with a single. To me, that's inequitable. Like we need to be negotiating and trading if we are going to really have fair trade, which is what is typically implied in these things. If we really are going to have fair trade across the continent, right, we have to get to that point of truly a united Africa, right? So yes, I'm glad we have the African Union, but we need to get to a place where we are trading as a continent, so that we're really coming to the table on equal footing with a China, with an Australia, with a UK, with an America, and saying, no, you will not trade with this single, small square footage, nation. And then if they, let's say, like Rwanda, if they say, oh, we don't want to sell it to you for 25 cents, you're gonna go to the neighbor. And we've seen this happen, right? So you go to one country, let's say you go to Kenya, and they're like, no, we're not gonna, we don't want to sell it because we have standards. They go to the next country, and they're like, we will sell it to you for even less.
Yeah.
And it's the person who's in the tightest pinch who says yes to it. And once you say yes, you set the tone for the rest of African nations, where it all comes together. We break down these silos and these imaginary boundaries that were put in by the colonizers who literally carved it all out for their own selfish ambition, right? If we come together and do what the leader of the former Gaddafi, whether you like him or not, he was for the unification of Africa as a continent, so that we actually have economic leverage.
What he proposed, I don't know if the world knows this. What he proposed, like she said, whether you loved him or not, what he proposed was brilliant, right? So it would have destabilized the euro and the American dollar. He said, we're going to start dealing with gold, right? Libya alone has hundreds, tons and tons of gold. So you want oil, etc., blah blah blah. If you deal with Africa, we're going to deal with gold.
Yes.
Right. And what it would have done? That would have sunk America. Right. So whether you like the person or not, but getting back to the unification of Africa, it's like America. We have a federal system and we have a state system, right? Right. So there's things that's done on the federal level.
Correct.
That's what Africa needs. Africa needs that the 54, 55 countries to unite, despite the different languages and everything else, and say, hey, this is how we need to do it. Otherwise, Russia will come in, America will come in, China will come in, right? I call it the eagle, the dragon, the bear, right? Absolutely. They will always be there, but Africa is the lion. Absolutely. Africa is the lion waiting to just arise, and I think it's the generation, our generation, the generation that's coming. We need to awaken them and let them know that the lion will one day be above the eagle, the dragon, and the bear.
For Ruth, Pride of Africa, yes, yeah. I love it. I love it. And I want to kind of wind it down on the importance of language. And if you didn't catch my discussion with, I believe, Grace Kako and Mr. Suzanne, we did address the importance of language, especially our indigenous languages, in discussing technical content, in scientific progress and all that stuff, right? Understanding that words matter, language matters, context matters. And so one of the things that I do want to congratulate our people on is, I believe, did the African Union recently pass Kiswahili, I believe, as make the primary language across the board. I believe that was a recent, because I remember seeing a post on that. I was like, they're getting closer, one step closer. We have unified around a language. And that is not a small thing. For folks to come in and say, hold up, if Kiswahili is the kind of the tie that ties us all together across many languages spoken, not only across the continent, but even within countries. I know Kenya alone has over 14 languages.
Right.
In a small tiny member state. So if you think of all the other languages and dialects spoken across the continent, that if we get together and say Kiswahili is the base that we're all going to use because we all speak a variation of it across the region, bam.
Yeah.
That will change things. So yeah, it's funny.
And it existed, the European Union, right? It exists.
Yes.
It exists, but whenever it's Africa's turn to stand up, everything is just pushed aside. But those who are offended by by what we teach and taken aback by it, well, guess what? This is the norm now, because there's an awakening, and it's our turn now to educate the true story about how great, how great we are as a people. I'm not here to take away anything from anyone, but you got to speak the truth.
Yes.
In order for this youth to understand greatness, you got to tell them, right? Your greatness is not in posing with a picture with a bottle of Hennessy and a gun in your hand.
Yes.
Right? All right. We need to stop the mental slavery and the shackles and the banging of jail cells. I wrote a poem called "The Code," and I said the code is within. I found that code. You found that code. That's what makes us great. But you have to find it, and you need a support system around you that understands it, that teaches it to you. So Africa is great. Africa has been
Can y'all hear us? Yeah, you're back. All right. See, I get you. I'm telling you, we're dropping too many gems out here. Clearly, this probably ever happened. So I guess with that quick note, thank you, Doc. Thank you so much for joining me today. And if anything, I just want to shout out some comments up in here because apparently folks are loving it. Folks are like dropping gems. Let's have more of these live sessions. It's so needed. Absolutely. Thank you so much. A great show. Listen, folks pulled up. Thank you. Marcus got me 4 times. I love it. Yes, right. These are very important conversations to have, not only between ourselves, but again, for our future generations. How do we reclaim what is rightfully ours? How do we reclaim our narrative? How do we reclaim our humanity as a people?
Right.
To rebuild the nation.
Yeah.
And
it's a good thing you mentioned humanity, though, because a lot of things have been, we've been humanized and demoralized as a people, and you see the generational stress and the generational pain, and we have to deal with that also as a people, especially now in mental health and everything else. We have to be our own keeper, and we got to take care of each other. Yeah. That's key.
Thank you.
I do want to shout out the gallery, Michelle.
Oh, please do.
And we're down here in at the Rusi Gallery with the app. We have the auction app.
Yes.
We are 1224 North 3rd Street in Harrisburg. Yes. This gallery is kind. We have West African art, mostly from Ghana. We have Caribbean art, and we have the local African American art, all here. So what we're representing here is true African diaspora art. I call it the African circle art. So come on down to 1224 North 3rd Street in Harrisburg, or pop up on the app and see what you can get on there and learn from us.
Yes, please, and thank you. And clearly, as the people have said, they want more of these, so hopefully this will not be out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I am loving.
I want to shout out, my Liberian sister.
Yeah. Oh, come on,
Rochelle. She's on
Rochelle in the house. Thank you so much.
Shout out Michelle. Kate.
I love it.
Yeah.
We see you. Yeah. We see y'all. Oh, this is awesome. Thank you. So if you're within the Harrisburg or you're passing through the Harrisburg region, please do check out NoSeek Gallery as well as NoSeek Media. Yeah, we're out here doing so many things. And again, thank you for taking the time to check out our own The Narrative Africa session today, discussing Africa, the country, the continent, and the possibilities. I hope to catch you on the next episode of Own the Narrative Africa. Doc will be back, y'all, very soon. Okay, clearly we may have to make this a series. Thank you. Let a friend, let them know, and I'll catch you in the next one. Narrative Africa. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.